The information that will be shared in this video, it's my understanding, my practice, but more important, my experience. So don't take anything that is going to be said here as the absolute truth. If you resonate with anything that is being said, you can put it into practice and let your experience determine the validity of what is being shared here. Having said that, enjoy this video. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I titled it, Who or What Created the World? And I put in quotations the world created and also the words world. I put those two in quotations, and what I want you to know is that this video is not about what you think it is, okay? It's not about trying to answer that question. There is a point to this. Trust me on this one. You will appreciate it. And that's going to be towards the end of the video. But first, let's talk about this idea of the creation of the world, okay? Now remember, non-duality points to the recognition that there's no separation, so what world could we be talking about, right? However, we have the experience of being separate entities, so within that context, I'm going to address the issue, okay? So here we go. First of all, if you look, for example, according to the Bible, I think it's Genesis, I believe so, in the Bible states that God created the world, the heaven, the earth, and all that stuff. That's the one that most people, more people were taught. We have, for example, philosophies like the Advaita Vedanta, who says that God is all that there is, and there's nothing else. So if there's nothing else, and God is all that there is, or consciousness, whatever they wanted to call it, well then, logically, must be suggested that the world must be a creation from that very same source. God is all there is, right? So it's like when you're dreaming at night, the mind is the only source, and whatever happens in the dream, the projection itself, well, by logical deduction, must be a projection or creation, it doesn't matter which word you want to use, from that same source, from the mind. Just makes perfect sense, it's very logical. Then we have, for example, A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles have a different approach. The Course in Miracles does not give credit to God for the creation of this world, because the creation of this world is duality. You may see quote-unquote positive things, but also you see all the negative things, the suffering, the killing, the disasters and everything. So how could you attribute that to God when God is love, right? It's like if God created this world and I am dealing with all the suffering and all the pain and all the judgment and everything, how can I go to God if God is the one responsible for this creation, right? So the way A Course in Miracles approaches is a little different. The Course in Miracles, just like the Advaita Vedanta or anything, they suggest that God is all that there is. That's it, nothing else. Now, in the Course, this thought of separation seemed to appear. That thought is what refers to as consciousness, the first sign of a separation. Also, it refers to as the Son. You see, God is the Father, and this thought is the Son. Okay, now God has nothing to do with this, has nothing to do with that thought or anything. That is just a mystery that seems to have appeared. Also, that thought could be referred to as ego, but for the sake of this explanation, look what happens. God is all that there is, there's nothing else. That's it. That's oneness, that's love, that's non-division. So within all there is appears this thought, okay? Now, Because this thought seems to have appeared, well, that thought is divided into two thought systems. See, God has nothing to do with any of this. God is Godding. But this thought, well, is divided into two thought systems. One would be the thought system of ego, which is the belief that a separation did occur, and the other half would be the thought system of what A Course in Miracles refers to as the Holy Spirit, which is nothing more than the memory that this separation never occurred. Okay? That's all there is. That's what there's one line in the manual for teachers that says that the moment the separation seems to have occurred, God gave the answer, which would be the Holy Spirit. In time, this seemed to happen long ago, but in reality, it never did. Okay, so let's not try to wrap your mind around it. The conceptual mind, it would make no sense. How come this experience that I seem to be having never happened? Okay, so don't try to wrap your mind around it. But anyhow, so there is the thought of separation. Then there's the ego thought system, which is the one that believes in the separation. And then there's the Holy Spirit thought system that reminds us that the separation never occurred. So, what happens? The thought system of the ego, which is the belief in separation, as an attempt to hide from God, projects the world. You see? So now you see the world that is being projected, and the ego thought system believed in the world that it has projected. Now the Holy Spirit thought system knows that this world is an illusion. So technically speaking, all the Course in Miracles is asking me to do is to choose the Holy Spirit thought system. That's it. Now, by choosing the Holy Spirit thought system, I don't believe in the content of the dream, and I can rest in peace, or I can experience the peace that passes all understanding. Every single philosophy point to that very same thing. Whether it's the Bible when it says, "Be still and know that I am God," whether it's the Advaita Vedanta that might say, "Just be quiet, silence," or the Course in Miracles that says, "Nothing means anything," or "Forgiveness does absolutely nothing, it simply observes and judges not." Or if I can use some of my favorite quotes from the Course in Miracles, like from chapter 4, "If you're willing to renounce to be the guardian of your thought system and offer it to me, I will correct it very gently and lead you back to God." It's another way of saying, if you are willing to recognize that you know absolutely nothing, you don't feed the mind with its concepts and its beliefs, then the correction will take place, and you will not be returned to a place where you left. You simply recognize that you are. If you're in bed sleeping, you didn't leave the bed, even though you are in the dream, it seems like you're somewhere else. But if you withdraw the attention from the dream, you are quote-unquote returned, but you're not returning to any place because you never left the bed on the first place. But that's the language that is used to say you return back to the place that you never left, you know. Or chapter 14, "When your peace is disturbed, simply say this: I do not know the meaning of anything, including this. Therefore, I do not know how to respond to it, and I will not allow my past judgments, belief, whatever, to be the light to guide me now." And if you look at, for example, the Course's lessons, they're always saying the same thing. Lesson number 1, "Nothing I see means anything." Lesson number 2, "I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me." Lesson number 3, "I do not understand anything I see." Lesson number 4, "These thoughts do not mean anything." Lesson number 5, "I am never upset for the reasons I think." Lesson number 6, "I'm upset because I see something that is not there." Lesson number 7, I see only the past, meaning the thoughts, the interpretations. Lesson number 8, my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. Lesson number 9, I see nothing as it is now. Lesson number 10, my thoughts do not mean anything. I keep it going and going and going, always somehow bringing the attention back to the only problem we're having here is that you're believing your thoughts. That's all. If you choose not to believe them, then you are literally choosing the Holy Spirit thought system, and the consequence of that is that you will live in peace, the peace that passes all understanding. And that's why every philosophy in the end is pointing to that space of beingness, of just presence, which is right now. You cannot not be. Okay, now this is why I did this video, or this video was done through me anyway. Because to me, whether God created the world, whether it was a projection of the ego thought system, it does not matter to me. Knowing that has never served me for anything. You see, if anything, it would be good to establish an argument with somebody else, and what is that good for? Keep perpetuating the belief in the separation. So to me, that never served me. What served me is the recognition that I am. You see? Because if I get caught into in hypotheticals or hypotheses or whatever the mind wants to conjure up to keep engaging, you see, I will miss the mark. I will lose what all those philosophies or teachings or whatever you want to call them are pointing to. They're pointing to the peace that passes all understanding. They're pointing to the essence of the I amness, of the I am that I am. They're pointing to the love that I am. You see, the absence of judgment, the absence of fear. So what we're reminded here is not to figure out how this world was created, because it was never created. That's the point. This never happened. However, there's a way of living in the world that is not of the world, you see? And that's what we're pointing to. Who cares if God created the world? Who cares if the ego is the one who projected it? It doesn't matter. What matters is that if I don't believe any of my thoughts right now, I can be at peace. In other words, I can be happy. And that is what these videos are pointing to. That's why I do not adhere with any particular philosophy. As a matter of fact, I don't consider myself a teacher of any kind. I do notice how life uses this instrument to share information, to no one, of course, because there's really no separation. However, within this context, this is what I find myself doing. In the same way that Mozart found himself writing music, and the same way that Da Vinci found himself doing paintings. You see, in the same way that Shakespeare found himself writing. You see? Well, I find myself doing this, and at times I find myself creating music, and at times I find myself writing books, and at times I find myself talking to people, meaning talking to friends and having a regular conversation, and at times I find myself being by myself in quiet, you see, but none of that defines who I really am, because what I am is exactly what you are, which words cannot describe. We can call it love, we can call it essence, we can call it unicity, we can call it absolute, we can call it whatever you want, but in the end, I am. You see, this is what this is pointing to. And remember, when I say I am, I'm not saying me person, I'm saying you, me, we both, I am, because that is all that there is. So anyhow, this is the inspiration that came through this instrument. I hope it served, and like always, reminding that may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.